Hello from Salt Lake City, Utah, in the headquarters for the National Association of Certified Evaluators and Analysts, NACVA, and the Consultants Training Institute. Thank you for joining us for this social media event. This month's topic is plans or whether strategies going into 2018 to help you grow and build your practice. We have some expert panelists who are joining us for this discussion who have presented within NACVA over the past several years with various perspectives and strategies, all designed to help you look into next year and how to grow and build your practice. We have Rod Burkert, who is a member of NACVA, holds NACVA certifications as well as other evaluation credentials. If you are an analyst yourself, you've probably sat in a course or a session with Rod over the past several years. Also joining us is Lee Frederiksen with Hinge Marketing, and also Colin Brown with SyncNet. So we'll start with Rod. Being an evaluation analyst yourself and having grappled with this topic since you started your practice more than 20 years ago, actually, having taught and mentored and supported other analysts, not only technically in their practice, but in most recent years have branched out into strategies to help these folks build their practice. Tell us first a little bit about what you do and some of the things you personally have done to grow and build your practice, and also just giving you a full opportunity to discuss some topics, just a few strategies that you would propose that folks consider.
Okay. Well, a quick blurb about me is that I still run a traditional valuation practice. Lee's going to like this because I am specialized. If you imagine looking through the gun sights of a scope, the crosshairs of where I specialize are tax purpose valuations, so gift estate, charitable contribution, elections, all tax purpose valuations, so fair market value, only for manufacturers and distributors. I don't do ESOPs, I don't do pharma, I don't do healthcare, I don't do fair value. I have a niche. And I believe that more than anything has contributed to the success of my traditional practice. The key word there is success, and it's something that I just thought of and jotted down when you started asking me a question, Brian. I think it's important for everyone on this call to realize that what a successful practice is for me versus anyone else is dramatically different. And so whatever, my esteemed colleagues talk about today, including me, we all have to talk about what success looks like to you. And that's a great segue into, everybody I think on this call knows that I live, work, and travel full-time in an RV. We are closing in on 8 years. We don't own a home. There's no storage facility with excess stuff that needs to be packed away. Everything that we own fits inside of a 37-foot Class A motorhome. We travel around. We just finished a 15,000-mile road trip in 2017. In over nine and a half months, we visited every one of the lower 48 states and the District of Columbia with my wife and our 2 dogs. And it gets me to the point of saying, that's what success looks like to me. I tell people all the time, I'm as busy as I want to be, not as busy as I could possibly be, because what matters most to me, what success means to me, is that I can keep traveling in the RV first, and that I maintain my traditional valuation practice second. So, I don't want to hog up all the time. You asked for some strategies. I mean, basically, Brian, I've gotten where I am today as a result of all of the teaching that I did for NACVA. So again, Lee's going to love this. That's how I built my authority. I was out there speaking to, literally thousands of people that were going through the CVA training center, and people have heard of me and they know about me from speaking. Even if they haven't met me in person, they still know that I speak and I write on this subject.
Mhm.
So number one is I built my authority by speaking. I also do a ton of writing. I have very targeted list of connections, people that I work with on LinkedIn, and I use social media. And, I'm probably one of the few people who can say that most of my new work comes to me via LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So
That's a,
I want to be done. Okay, go ahead. But if you want to follow up, I just don't want to.
yeah, no, I think that's a really good segue. One of the topics I know you've spoken on, Lee, and obviously reinforced through your social media publishing presentations is being that visible expert as a way to build your brand and credibility. Picking up on this topic that Rod has obviously indicated has helped him build success. Talk, Lee, a little bit about why both of you really feel being that visible expert is a great strategy for these analysts to consider, and some things to do to put those that goal into motion.
Yeah.
Can I tee this up for Lee?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let me quick tee this up for Lee.
Please do.
Because when I do a presentation, I ask people, if you had a acute, complex litigation or estate planning problem that was really painful to you, that you needed to have solved, are you going to go to an attorney's door and look at their marquee and have the list of services read, family law, employment law, contracts, real estate, and estate planning? Are you going to go to that person, that generalist, or are you going to go to the specialist who has one line on the front of their door that says, so-and-so Esquire specializing in estate planning? And everybody agrees that to solve their problem, to cure their pain, they would go to a specialist. And almost everyone I talk to in the business valuation industry, obviously with notable exceptions, are generalists. And they're generalists because they're afraid that specializing is going to limit them instead of focusing them. And Lee's book, I'm gonna plug for Lee, even though he's probably too gracious to do it. The Visible Expert, free ebook, 133 pages, profile of Chris Mercer in there, has had a tremendous influence about how I've organized my tactics for developing my practice. Take it away, Lee.
Okay, I don't know that I need to say anything. I mean, it's a great point, and I think you really put your finger on it that, when people are looking for someone to work with, they're looking for someone who can solve their problem. And they don't probably understand everything about what you do. They don't know how to evaluate you. Expertise is invisible. You can't tell who has it by looking at them, and you have to somehow make it tangible. And that's what speaking, what writing, what social networking, what social media, that's what all of those things do. They make your expertise visible, because if you can't make it visible, then you're just trying to be, you're counting on someone's charity to give you work if you can't show them why they should work with you. I think one of the other biggest things as it relates to this whole concept of specialty, there are some very real practical reasons why a specialist has an advantage. I think Rod really hit on one of them. That is the assumption that a person has better, more useful knowledge if they specialize in an area, which is true. The second thing is, when you have a specialty, you can concentrate your marketing and network. Your whole marketing is much easier to manage. So if you have, let's say, $1,000 to spend and you have 1,000 people you're trying to reach, you only have $1 to reach each one. But if you take that same $1,000 and you have 10 people to reach, you can do a lot with it. And that's the point, because different industry verticals tend to have conferences, they have trade publications, they have things you can attend, things you can read, things you can write in, all that helps you really develop your visibility and your expertise within that area. So it's counterintuitive, but actually the narrower you go in your niche, the faster you grow. The narrower you grow, the faster you grow. So that's the thing. And, you know, we're prisoners of our own biology in some ways. You know, we're herd animals and we stick together. So you look to other people around you to see what do they do and does that feel comfortable? And most people are generalists. And because it's frightening for them to specialize. But those who do, I think as Rob pointed out, really have a big advantage in the marketplace.
Right. I mentor our member client services staff here at headquarters who process candidates through the CVA credentialing program. And many of them, when they're, you know, considering a credential, you know, they obviously see value in it because the opportunity to, you know, charge more higher fees than their traditional accounting or tax or valuations or consulting services. But in doing so, you know, reinforcing this message of specializing, I think that one of the things we try to also convey to these folks is to, when you want to consider specializing in something, you know, consider a specialty area that is of interest to you, whether it's sports or veterinary or something related to tax work. I'm also doing a industry analysis in your metropolitan area, find out what the key economic drivers are in your metropolitan area, and really trying to find out what the opportunities are where you live, particularly if you're a small practitioner or a private practitioner, not in a big or much larger firm, is to really drive into where you live in your geographic area, see what the economic drivers are, and then, you know, consider specializing in one of those areas. Just a little bit of advice that we give to our CVAs who are, you know, wanting to pursue this credential and not quite knowing how to start, but reinforcing the message of specialization is very important and critical, I think, to, you know, benchmarking what success can mean for you, picking up on Rod's prior comment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We also have on this panel Colin Brown, who works with several clients to grow and build their practice. And one of his key messages is how to harness the power of the internet to focus on marketing and to improve the analytics of your website. Colin, can you talk a little bit about some of the strategies and concepts that have helped your clients become successful?
Well, that's a big question. There's obviously a lot of things that can be done on the, you know, everything is on the web today. So a couple things that I'm noticing and seeing a big trend in is whether to focus on marketing your corporate brand or your personal brand. And I was really slow to jump on the social media bandwagon. And I have found, you know, the entire social media world is based on an individual. When you sign up for LinkedIn, it's not actually as a corporate client, it's an individual. And so I think that, especially since there's so many CVAs that are solopreneurs, there are some, obviously we have large firms as well, but the personal branding is becoming ultra important. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. If you decide to go out on your own, if you decide to leave your firm, I've seen even recently some CVAs who were in large firms who have now decided to go out on their own. And by, you know, if you start personally branding yourself right now, I think is very important. Also, I attended Lee's presentation in Chicago. And in fact, I wrote down, of all the notes I took the entire in the entire thing, I wrote down these three things, two things. He mentioned in his presentation that and it's already been mentioned, but I want to just, re-emphasize it. And that is, if you specialize in niche services, you'll grow, you'll be an additional 25% compared to the average person. If you specialize in an industry, you'll have an 89% increase. And I know Lee can, mention all these things, but those are the only things I wrote down from the entire conference. So I think it's really important to double down in that way. I would also say, if you haven't read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, it's a great book. He talks about one particular concept about companies that have become great, and that is the hedgehog concept. And that is where, a fox has 100 ways he's tricky and sneaky, and he tries to get his prey, to kill his prey in 100 different sneaky ways. But a hedgehog only knows how to do one thing. It curls up in a ball and lets its prickly spines become its protector. And it's the only thing it can do. And so what he suggests, and the best companies do this, is, and this might be something good for everyone to ask in the coming year as you prepare, is what can I be the best in the world at, or the best in my state, or wherever you're targeting. The other question that he asks in this hedgehog concept is, what am I deeply passionate about? And then third, what drives my economic engine? And if you put those in 3 circles, and where those 3 circles cross and combine is where you could really spend your focus and your attention and all your marketing, as Lee mentioned, as little as it may be, on that particular focus, you're going to find great success. And that's how you're going to find success if you want to increase your presence on the internet as well. So.
We have a question for Rod. Rod, how do buyers of professional services find BVFLS experts like us?
Oh, well, and I'm, Lee, I feel like I'm an unpaid sidekick for Lee, but I'm going to reference back to his book, The Visible Expert, and which I, coach from. And I and Lee and The Visible Expert will tell you that the number one way that buyers find like us is online. And I think the number is something like 30 or 31%. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, so it's not the only way, but it's the top way that buyers find experts like us. And, even if people know you, they're still going to check you out online. They take any further steps. So when it comes to being online for valuation experts, put yourself into a Google search, and where do you show up? You're going to show up in Google, but what are the citations under that? Where does your LinkedIn profile show up? Where does your website show up? And I know that people say to me, they have said to me in my coaching groups, well, Rod, my website doesn't bring any business in any new business that I'm aware of, yet I'm still busy. And my response to that is, yes, you are busy with the people that have selected you, despite the fact that you have little or no online presence or a bad website. And I think, I got this from a webinar I watched on Hinge as well, that, going online to find experts like us, it's not an anomaly. I mean, to me, this is something it's a shift because searching online is going to become more popular as more millennials make more hiring decisions, because they're the generation most comfortable with conducting their research online, even for experts like us. And in a very few years, I think by 2020 or 2022, something like that, the scale is going to tip in favor of the number of millennials in the workforce. So that relationship that you have with that seasoned, grizzled, bearded law firm senior partner that's been giving you work all these years, he is saying to his or her associates, hey, find me a business valuation expert skilled in tax purpose valuations for manufacturing and distribution, and lives in the Philadelphia market, because that's where I used to live. those old timers aren't doing those searches. They're assigning those searches to their associates, and it's the associates that are going out and finding us online. And almost sad to say that if you're not online, if you don't have a good presence online, if it's not clear who you are, what you do, and why I should call you, it's like you don't even exist to a vast number of potential leads and prospects and referral sources who would only be happy to find you and hire you if they could find you.
On that same topic, I think being online is critical, but being online strategically and in a smart way is probably more important than just generally being online. Colin, you've done a presentation and also a webinar titled Internet and Reputation Marketing for Financial Advisors. Certainly we can't cover the entire webinar on this discussion, but some of the topics that you bring out in that presentation, can you maybe touch on a few of those?
Sure. So a couple things that are really helpful today, as far as if you're trying to get, higher in the search engine so you can be seen. But, as Rod just mentioned, the first thing I would always do is I'd actually just type your own name in and see what comes up. If you're not seeing your name, I've got a name that's fairly common, believe it or not, and so I have to add Colin Brown and then SyncNet. And when I combine the two, because I've always branded the SyncNet until I've started branding Colin Brown, I find all the things that show up. And you should be doing the same thing. This is going to show you if you have problems with your reputation, being online now, because other people can do the same search. You need to make sure that you manage your reputation. I've got clients right now who have, who struggle. They've got a cuckoo crazy client who's gone off and created a bunch of posts and different things to hurt the business. And so what we have to do is we've got to create content that buries that bad reputation, because other people are going to see it as well. So creating new and fresh content is king. And it's actually a pretty easy thing to do. Well, it's a daunting task if you think about it. But there's a way you can create content more easily, and that's by repurposing your content. So for example, if you write an article for NACFA, let's say, what I would do is I would take that article, it's going to be posted for NACFA, so that'll be one place that will get your name out and hopefully get a link on, in the search engine on your name. You're also going to take that same post and put it on your own blog, on your own website. I would then take the same article and create a PowerPoint from the text of the article. And then I would post that PowerPoint to SlideShare, which is always highly rated in the search engines. Then I would take that same PowerPoint and I would create a video using some software. I would use Camtasia is a great software package to do that. And you basically just talk into a microphone and look as you read through your PowerPoint. You create a video, you post that to YouTube. Well, YouTube is one of the easiest ways to get to the top of the search engine, and one way I recommend people do it. If you can literally get on the search engine in less than a day at the top. If you do, make sure that you put some good tags and descriptions, and actually I copy, there's a method you can use to copy the text of the actual script into the YouTube video, and YouTube is the #2 search engine in the world next to Google. And that's a great way to get to the top of the search engine. Every time you do that, you're going to be burying any bad comments that may be said about you. So that would be some things you could do right off the bat. Another thing you should be doing is check your title tag. Now, I know that's a technical term, but it's the thing that you can see when you go to a website. If you look at the type, you can see it by rolling over. It's an HTML tag, and it's at the top. It shows at the top of your in the code. And in most cases, I know a lot of CVAs are using website builder type solutions, but it'll be a field called title. The title tag is the most important thing that you can change on your website, and that should contain the niche focus that you're targeting. So let's just say expert, I'll just make one up, but expert witness, St. George, Utah. Now, if you put that in your title tag, so I'm doing a couple things. I've got the actual, target keyword phrase, which is expert witness. Then I've got St. George and Utah. I can experiment. As I can show you 100 examples where I will actually try this every once in a while just to see how Google works with it. But I'll put in a keyword phrase at the front, and then put in the location, and then the city, and then the state, and maybe even the zip code. I will go back in after Google's done it. I'll wait a day or so, go back in after Google's now re-indexed my page, and find, when I do a search on, expert witness, St. George, Utah, I'm in the top 10, and I can do that. It's the cool thing about it is there's no one else in your industry doing this, and so it's pretty easy to get fairly high fairly quickly. And the more niche oriented you are, using good keyword phrases that target specifically what you're targeting, you're going to find success pretty easily. Mm-hmm. The other thing you can do, and I'll just give you 2 more because I know I don't want to take all the time, but you can post comments. So another way to get higher in the search engines is to get links back to your site. So Google doesn't necessarily believe anything that you say about yourself. What it does is it believes what other people say about you. So the more links, so here's an easy way to do it. I would go to somebody else. I would go to an industry expert in the industry you're at. I would then post on their blog a comment, and it needs to be a good, legitimate comment, so it'll actually prove it. But in that comment, you get to put in your name and your website address. What you can do is a little sneaky trick, if they'll accept it, is put in, when you put in the name, put in expert witness. Just put in expert witness if that's the keyword you're targeting. That's going to give you a link back from Google for expert witness to your website. And every time you get a link back to your site, it gives validation to Google that is a legitimate site on this particular topic. And that's going to also raise you up in the search engines. 2 more things I would probably do, and that would be, if you haven't already, go to google.com/business. Make sure you've logged into your Gmail account or create one. It's free, so just create a Gmail account and go to google.com/business, and then validate your business. When you do that, Google is going to show, when I do a search for whatever I specify. I think right now, if you type in software St. George, because that's the option that I selected, I'm doing an experiment right now, I'm the first guy who pops up. And I don't have any reviews on that particular listing at all. But that's another way you'll show up in the top. We call it the Google 3-pack. It's the top 3 businesses that show up for that particular keyword phrase that you're targeting. So that would be the next thing I would do. And then finally, get reviews. If you can, send out an email to some of your best buddies or friends and have them, do a review on that google.com account, I'm just telling you, you're going to be in the top 3. You will show up for your location everywhere, and you will own that spot because no one else is doing it.
Very good strategies, Colin. Lee, we have a question. What are the steps in developing a strategic plan?
Great point. Great point. I think the first step would be to start with asking yourself the question, where can I provide the most value? Where is it that I have something special to offer? I have a background in a particular industry, and as valuations relate to that industry, that's a perfect example. It's probably one of the most common ones. Another one may be there's a lot of that industry in your area, and you have some starting place in that. That can be another kind of way of doing it. But ask yourself where you're providing the most value, because that's really the place you want to start, that and where you have some interest. The second thing I do is I do some research on my market. And by research on my market, it's the best is to talk to people. But if you can't do that, talk to other professionals who service that market and find out their perspective on that market. Do some online research for it, some search in it. Find out what are the issues that are driving that market. What do people care about in that market? And I think that helps you understand what you should be talking about and what's relevant to that market. I'll give you just a simple example. One of our clients is a very small accounting firm, but they specialize in very high transactions, high value transactions in foreign real estate investors. They have a particular area where they're focused on. Now, what they've understood from focusing on that market is that the speed at which they do the work affects the return on investment that the investor gets. So they can provide, by gearing up their whole practice to work very quickly, they provide a greater return to that investor. That's an example of something where by understanding an industry, you understand what's really important to them, and you can position your service to be complementary with that. You know, we all know that in the expert witness, there's certain things that attorneys value. Your believability, the credentials you have, those kinds of things. So those are very important for that. Whereas in a different kind of practice, it may be the industry knowledge you have that's of the most value to them. So so researching your market to understand what's really important and where you can get the value. The other thing I do when I'm researching that market is I find out where do these people gather? Which are their LinkedIn groups they belong to? What are the trade associations they belong to? What are the publications they're reading? Because that tells you where you want to do your guest articles and what things you want to attend and so on and so forth. And I think for most people, if you do those three basic steps about understanding where you're going to get value, researching your market, and then tailoring your marketing plan to where these people are already gathering, that will probably have at least a doubling of the effectiveness of your marketing as compared to most of your other peers, because people just don't do that. They don't go through the discipline of doing those basic steps that really help them get a much more robust marketing plan in place.
You mentioned two key words, I think, in this topic, strategic plan versus marketing plan.
Mm-hmm.
What are the distinctions between those two?
Simply, a strategic plan is your overall business, which will take into account like your exit strategy, your capitalization of it, all your operations, all those business considerations one takes into account. Where marketing really focuses on how you will generate, nurture, and convert new prospects. That's really where the focus is on that. Now, everyone in the professional services, if they've been around for a while, they know that referrals are important. And they know that being able to get those referrals are important. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is how many referrals come from people that you haven't worked with. You know, everybody, most cases, people you've worked with will refer you. In most cases, about 85% of the time, people are satisfied and they'll refer someone. But where the real power comes is when you find a way to get referrals that goes beyond people you've worked with. And that's what being online, the kinds of things that Rob and Colin have talked about. We're being online, we're being in social networking groups, speaking engagements. That dramatically increases the number of people who know what Rob does, or know what Colin does, or know what Lee does. because they're familiar with it. They've heard something about you. And I get it all the time from people you would think who are competitors of mine, but they're not really competitors. They're colleagues, and they have a client who has a need that you specialize in, an important need. And boy, oh boy, are they great referrals. They are really great referrals, probably even better than from a client. Because they know they're referring you for a specific thing, for a specific reason, rather than, oh, you know, Rob's a good guy.
Well,
Which
that's
I think,
yeah, Rod's a pretty cool guy. I've known him for a long time. You know, you brought up another good point. You know, both of you and Colin and Rod have been talking about building your brand and your reputation online, becoming that visible expert. Rod, as a practitioner, you know, and having a strong brand and presence and being a very highly recognized expert through all these strategies, but how do you then convert a prospect or someone who is responding to you online or to your social media? How do you convert those prospects, I'd say, into an actual client?
Good question. I think the mistake, like I'll run into people all the time that say, oh, I tried that LinkedIn and it didn't work for me. And because Brien has known me for a long time, he knows that I'm not one who is apt to just let things go. So I'll start asking questions like, well, how consistent are you? You know, how often are you showing up on LinkedIn? Oh, you know, I check my profile once a month and I go on every other month or something like that. Well, duh. You know, if you're not going to be on LinkedIn on a consistent basis, and I'm using LinkedIn as an example, or any other social media platform, if you're not showing up on a regular basis, don't expect to get results. I have not cleared these comments with Lee or Colin, so I'm interested in their perspective. But the number one thing that I tell people, regardless of what social media platform you select, you don't sell on social media. You don't walk up and attorney and say, hi, I'm Rod Burkert. I do business valuations. You know, can you give me a job? Can you give me a referral? You know, you don't walk up on LinkedIn or, again, any other social media platform and expect someone who doesn't really, you know, they don't have the know, like, and trust buckets filled with you yet, and expect them to hand you a $10,000, some five-figure check to do a business valuation. So my advice, Brien, in answering your question, how do you convert a lead into a prospect and a prospect into a client? In social media, it's being useful. It's being helpful. I post something at least 2 or 3 times a day on LinkedIn because I want people to think, who the heck is this Rod Burkert guy who keeps showing up every day and sharing useful content that I can use in my practice or in my industry? Who is this guy that keeps trying to introduce me to other people that I might find useful? Who's this guy? And that's what social media is about. It's the social part of it. It's befriending people. It's helping people. It's being useful. It's not selling business valuation services. So where does that occur? So eventually, people wonder who I am, and they'll go to my LinkedIn profile and find out more about me, which will then, or they might just go right through to my website, and I can monitor the traffic on my website and see where it's coming from. And when people come to my website, it's very clear about what I do. You visit rodburkert.com, there's only 3 options that you can pick. You can talk to me about coaching, you can talk to me about training, or you can talk to me about consulting. I don't offer 10 different kinds of services because to me that just screams generalist. And then, you know, the website itself, it's not a digital brochure. Colin and Lee and I look old enough to remember the collateral brochures we used to leave behind with clients in the 80s and the 90s. And many people's websites are nothing more than a digital brochure. But instead, your website has to convince people that you can do what you say you can do. So do you have, what kind of resources do you have? What kind of downloads that, can people get? White papers, case studies, testimonials, things of that nature, toolkits, checklists, things that would be of interest to your audience of clients, prospects, and referral sources, and then give them a way to contact you. Hey, Rod, I was on your website. I noticed that you do, or you offer a report review service, or I noticed that you do coaching to help people grow their practices. I'm interested in finding out more information. So that's how you take a lead to a prospect and a prospect to a client.
Great.
But most of it has to do with no hard sell and showing up every single day. Real quick, I'm just reminded, Seth Godin, who I think we all know, or certainly Lee and Colin know. Brien, I know you know Seth Godin. Seth Godin has blogged every single day, some 7,000 days in a row. No holidays, no time off for Saturdays and Sundays, nothing of that. He just shows up every single day. And then people wonder, oh, that's Seth Godin, what an overnight success. Well, holy cow, he's been doing, he's been showing up every day for, 7,000 some blog posts. I think he deserves his overnight success.
We have a pretty specific question here, Rod, and it's from someone who holds the CBA. Mari Cashman. It's asking, I am not a CPA, but have degrees in accounting, economics, and an MBA. I'm a sole practitioner with 30 years experience in valuation and M&A in large organizations. I'm running into problems with attorneys being hesitant to employ me for valuations, particularly in divorce, as they are concerned that the opposition will have a CPA expert. They like my reports very much. I've contacted the AICPA to see if I can get accredited by them for valuations, and so far they have refused since I am not a CPA. How do I combat this?
Wow. Well, there are people that do practice valuation that are not CPA. So my number one thing is, you've picked divorce work. Is there a reason for that? I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't do divorce work, but would you be better off in a field such as transactions and consulting and advisory that would be better suited to the skills that you have? And right now, the only other solution that doesn't escape me is, I have a really good friend, and he wanted to get into valuations. He started out solely as a CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. He went back and he got his CPA. He studied at home. He has 3 kids, a spouse who works from the home, and he buckled down and realized that if he really wanted to do this work, he needed the CPA designation, not because he was going to do CPA work, but because it improved his authority in the eyes of the people that he wanted to hire him. So if you're targeting referral sources that highly value the CPA designation and you don't want to go to another field, I'm saying make the time, make the effort to get your CPA designation.
I have some additional advice. I think to also establish your credibility in doing divorce litigation matters. You very much are involved in forensic accounting analysis, finding where the money is for your client, and getting some pretty critical training, if you haven't already, in some core forensic accounting skills related to divorce and matrimonial litigation, to be able to demonstrate as a non-CPA. Of course, pursuing the CPA certification is an option, as Rod has suggested, but other skills that are related to divorce matters, forensic accounting, for example, to distinguish really the core essence of that matter, really being able to dig into those financial analyses and all the tools and techniques that forensic accounting services, which are accounting related, could help you sort of build that credibility with those experts. Forensic accounting is a really hot buzzword as well, and people understand what forensic accounting is, I think, generally. And that would be some advice for me too, from me.
Just I not looking close enough to home, Brian, but my sister-in-law has an undergraduate degree in economics. She's an ASA and a CVA. Had and one of NACFA's passed 40 under 40, and I would say, with what I know, relatively speaking, she's had very little trouble getting all sorts of work. I will tell you that, one of the best lines that I used to use with an attorney is to say, hey, I realize you don't know me. All I want is for you to give me a shot so that you're capable of the kind of, that you can see the kind of work that I'm capable of. So I wasn't looking for the best client. I wasn't looking for, a General Electric executive divorce kind of thing. Start out with something really small so that you can prove that the CPA, for what your question is, so that you can prove that the CPA designation really didn't matter.
Right.
So that you build that trust with the attorney that says, okay, well, now I'm willing to give you another case because you did so well.
Right.
And you got to keep proving yourself over and over. And then, as Lee would say, then you got to go back to that attorney and say, hey, are there any other family law attorneys that that would benefit from my expertise? But it's always a matter of proving yourself every single time that you can do what you say you can do.
Mm-hmm. There's also a credential, the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst certification through, I don't recall exactly the name of the association that has that credential, but it is fairly well known, the CDFA, the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. Back to one of the earlier points that were made, if you can distinguish yourself in a specialty and then really build up your skill and knowledge and expertise, even with a specialized credential in divorce financial analysis, that might also help, tip the needle by not having the CPA license.
Yeah, or you might be able to find some other, I think what you're getting at is something that's very sound, finding another way to show your expertise other than a CPA. Write a book on valuation and divorces. Do some other thing that demonstrates your expertise and that is a valuable credential in that market that's not a CPA.
Right. Blog about it a lot and then repurpose it in all the ways that Colin.
Yeah, I think that's probably your best shot at it.
Yeah.
If other than finding somewhere where your background is valued.
Right. We just have a few minutes left, and each of you have firms and organizations that help analysts to tackle these strategies. Rod with BVA coaching, Lee with Hinge marketing, and Colin with SyncNet. In these last few minutes, we have. Oh wait, I see we have one more question. It's pretty technical, so I'm going to punt this to Rod. How do you see federal income tax legislation, here we go, particularly the possible repeal or modification of a state tax affecting the demand for valuation services?
Okay. What I'm thinking is, because this is my area too, it's not something like I'm totally unprepared. I am prepared to pivot. I think first of all, before everyone gets their underwear in a knot, we have to understand whether this law is even going to pass. And so, I kind of like what we saw with the 2704 regulations. All these appraisers were running around, the sky is falling, and it never fell.
Yeah.
Yes, and it never fell. So, politics aside, this administration has not been successful yet in getting, its key pieces of legislation passed, or passed without being significantly altered. So my first thought is, don't panic, but be prepared to pivot. I don't know what the new law is going to require in terms of needing an estate valuation for step up in basis. So you still may need a business valuation to establish that step up in basis. Don't overlook the fact that certain states still have estate taxes that require a valuation to be done. So even if it isn't done at the federal level, still may be required at the state level. Again, I'm just not one given to panic about this because I'm a solo practitioner, and what am I going to do? What's worrying about it going to do? Absolutely nothing. But I would say be prepared, because in the worst case, it probably won't happen. It's not like, I'm not imagining that this is going to be enacted for 2018. There will probably be some grandfathering, and you might have as much as a year to figure out what you're going to do in a new life, in a new business valuation life. But be prepared to pivot.
Yeah. In the few minutes we have remaining, as I started to get to, each of you offer support and services to this industry to help them tackle these issues. Colin, starting with you, just can you give a brief kind of summary of the kind of services and support you can help provide?
Sure. So I've got all kinds of things, but to stay focused, as we've just talked about, I focus mainly on helping manage your reputation if there's ends up being an issue, and then also just helping you get higher in the search engine so you get more traction and more leads and conversion. So another thing I do work on is with customers is getting conversion. So not just having the brochure site, but actually converting them into customers. So those are probably the main things that I do. I am actually releasing a new, what I call the personal brand builder, which is since I can put the plug in there, and it's going to be happening anytime soon. I actually have some CVAs beta testing it right now, and it will allow you to create so you may have a corporate website or something, but allow you to have a personal site so you can brand yourself personally and get another way to have your name show up above anything else in the search engines. So
thank you, Colin. Lee?
Thank you. I think there's two things that are going to be of most interest to people. If you are a part of a larger firm and you're dealing with issues of branding, promoting the visibility of different practices, the visibility of the whole firm, the Hinge Marketing offers those kinds of branding and marketing services. If you are an individual or a solo practitioner or a small practice and you want to go, we have something called Hinge University, which is available on our website, hingemarketing.com. And that is a do-it-yourself or on your own 24/7 resource to help you with becoming more visible as an expert and those kinds of things. So it has courses tailored for individuals. So I think those two things will be of most help to most people.
Great, thank you, Lee. And Rod with BVA Coaching.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I am a valuation practitioner. In one way, shape, or form, I've been doing business valuations since the mid-1980s, and I've seen a lot, and I've done a lot. And one of the things that I've recognized is no matter how many people run around at a conference saying, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, they're all sweating for a reason. And that is, surveys have consistently shown that people aren't clamoring for the 25th way to calculate a discount for lack of marketability. They're not looking for the 10th way to determine a cost of equity. They're not looking for the 5th approach to tax effect a pass-through entity. What they really want help with is pricing and fee compression, bringing in new clients, and differentiating themselves. And so, a couple of years ago, I recognized that, and today that has taken shape by me offering primarily group and individual coaching of fellow BV practitioners, almost all primarily solo practitioners, people in large firms who want to go solo, or people who are responsible for the valuation practice of a really small firm. And a lot of them are looking like, I want to get out of tax and I want to get out of audit. I want to do valuation full time, but I don't know how to build a practice. And I think it's sad in a way that our we have such high level of technical skills, but very few marketing and positioning skills. And so what I offer through this coaching program is an opportunity for people to learn more about how to market and position themselves, to build authority so that they can get the kind of clients that they want, and most importantly, build a practice that they love coming to day in, day out, and find success in, however they define success for themselves.
Great. Well, thank you all for this very informative discussion, great topics, strategies. All of you who joined us online, thank you very much for joining us. You can visit nacva.com to find the contact information for Rod and Lee and Colin, who were the panelists for this discussion. And as we wrap up this year and look forward to next year, if there's any other services or support the association can offer to you in relation to building and growing your practice, please feel free to reach out to us. Happy holidays to all of you and the three of you on this discussion. Thank you again. And we'll check out for now.